In this fourth video of the Women of the Veil series, we will be exploring the Amazons, or as they called themselves at one time, the Women of the Golden Hive. Of course, this is a text here I'll be reading to you that is based on transmissions from Thoth given to me quite a few years ago. The record of Thoth has revealed that the lineage of Yeshua, that is Jesus, descended in part from the Amazons. It also tells us that the name Amazon was derived from Amazur, which means of the Mazur. The Mazur were a major post-Atlantean Grail family. I have a series on this YouTube channel called The Path of the Grail. It discusses the Mazur at some length. Just who are the Amazons? Their legend is as powerful as King Arthur's and nearly as little known historically. While the little recorded history we have on them tells us that the Amazons were all female warriors within the Hittite Empire, consisting of Asia, including Turkey, from 1400 BC through 323 BC, they were believed to be quite fierce, especially toward men. It is also believed that they would capture men and conceive by them, killing the infants if they were male and keeping them if they were female. However, in the book Priestesses by Norma Laurie Goodrich, she writes, and I quote here, "The German scholar Bachofen accused the early Greek heroes of being foes of the Amazons, who were real priestesses and women warriors. He charged they, the Greek heroes, not only salted the earth of Asia so that the inhabitants would thereafter die from starvation, they primarily combated women in the Asian social system. When the conquerors destroy the social structure of a civilization, deprive that society of its beliefs, customs, usages, and hierarchy, they effectively extinguish it completely. In Asia, the last bright sparks of light were the Asian priestesses who took up arms against foreign conquerors. Those brave women prepared to die on the spot were your now fabled Amazons." End of quotes. And now from the record of Thoth. The Amazons began as a single tribe of women priestesses in the latter days of Atlantis. The Melchizedekian temples of Atlantis had been usurped by the male priests, killing and imprisoning the female oracles. Some oracles from the temples escaped, many fleeing to distant lands. One was the priestess Concha, a beautiful, tall, flame-haired woman with Hyperborean blood, who had been born on the Atlantean isle of Ruta. Joining her in her flight were two other Melchizedekian priestesses named Zunia and Rachel, also Hyperborean Rutan blood. They established an oracle seat in the locale of the city of Smyrna, now Izmir. They were not warriors, but for obvious reasons were wary of men, and thus initiated a policy exclusive of males in their sacred order. They administered to both males and females who sought their vision, counsel, and healing arts. While still of childbearing age, they wished to perpetuate their lineage. These women were not only of cosmic Hyperborean heritage, but also contained some Atlantean Grail King-Queen blood as well. The Atlantean Grail King-Queens were the original families of Melchizedek, who migrated to Atlantis from Lemuria. The three oracles then began to select males from among scattered colonies in their immediate region to father their children. This was always with the consent of the male involved, and the sons were given to the fathers and their people, while the daughters were kept by the priestesses. Gradually, a small tribe of oracle priestesses was established in this manner. But they were not yet Amazons. They called themselves Conchi, that's Conchii. This was in honor of the founding priestess Concha. The Conchi maintained 5 sanctuaries. The main sanctuary on Avira, which was Samos, another at Chialamba, which was Smyrna, and 3 others in Ephesus, also on Cyprus, and one near Antioch in Syria. Centuries after the Atlantean deluge, a branch of Mazur Grail lineage migrated to this same region of Turkey. By this time, the main sanctuary for the Conchi was on an island later to be named Samos by the Greeks. While the Conchi had other sanctuaries, it was on Samos, then known as Avira, that the most highly regarded of their oracles resided. It was not long after their arrival that the Mazur Grail lineage group discovered the Conchi. They knew from certain myths among the people of that region that these women were their distant relations. They were, in the syntax of the Grail families, pure-born. I want to pause for a moment for those who have not listened to my other videos on the Grail family. Pure-born is not about race. It's about spiritual consciousness. I will say no more right here, but you can explore it further in my Grail series. Certain elect males of this particular Mazur tribe began to practice highly specific and spiritually powerful ceremonial conception rituals with the Conchi oracles on Avira. In order to truly appreciate the intention of these Mazur priests in the Conchi, it is important to understand that lengthy deliberation was placed upon the decision to recreate these sacred ancient conception rituals. While we think of such practices, we tend to imagine wild ceremonies in which men and women drink themselves into a stupor and pair at random under a full moon. Such subconscious images are the creation of much later times, both as a product of certain fallen pagan practices and of the Church. The Church tried to instill fear within the hearts of those under their jurisdiction for the purpose of further annihilating the goddess aspect of the Christ and the sacred Grail blood mysteries from the face of the earth. Thus, these images and perceptions do not at all describe the original sacred conception rituals of the ancients. These ceremonies were instead planned between the individuals way in advance and involved numerous stages of spiritual purification and preparation beforehand. It was a form of sacred marriage, although the commitment for the individuals involved was not lifelong. For the male, his obligation was to submit to the months of purification and instruction, using certain spiritual symbols and what we would now call yogic procedures. In addition, he was expected to give a dowry to that temple in support of the child through the first 3 years of its life, should it be a female. If the offspring were a male, the father would take this child and, with his wife or other female surrogate, such as a mother, sister, aunt, etc., raise the boy as an equal to his other or future children. Such male children from the womb of the Conchi were considered the finest of royalty among the Mazur, who were already a royal Grail lineage, being recognized as those who carried the higher consciousness of that holy family. Since the priestesses of the Conchi were quite well versed in the art of spirituality, requesting female children from the angelics who oversaw such matters, only a small number of these pregnancies turned out to be male, and these were only because of higher level requests by these angelics that the Conchi served the spiritual hierarchy in this way when needed. The responsibility of the female also involves spiritual purification and preparation very similar to that required of the males. She was expected to nurse and raise the girl child close by her side until she reached the age of 6. At this time, her daughter was sent to a special enclave where she learned her Conchi skills. In her 16th cycle of life, she would be sent to one of the Conchi sanctuaries as an oracle. During these years, from 6 onward, the child was permitted to visit the mother at certain times. Now, this may seem very harsh to us, but we have to place this in the context of the historical era. These women were following a spiritual code, and the children were being incredibly nourished and loved on an omni level. That means a universal level that we really can't comprehend very well because we've lost touch with that for the most part. In the year 5482 BC, a nomadic and warring tribe of primitive people began to raid the sanctuaries of the Conchi. These warring people were the descendants of the children of the Nephilim, the product of genetic experimentation by them in the Assyrian lands. Also, we know them as the Anunnaki. Many of the priestesses were killed, but as in the days of Atlantis, some were able to escape. They fled into other parts of Asia, some returning to Turkey centuries later. As they traveled into unknown territory, the peoples of those regions who knew of the Mazur then called these women the Amazur, A-M-A-Z-U-R. In later periods, they were also known in some regions as the Amazala. The Amazur's name for themselves was Anikavi, the women of the golden hive. The word kavi meant hive. However, if it were spoken in a specifically accented way, it meant precious, royal, or golden hive. The Anikavi were still oracles, but they also trained their women to be warriors so that they could hopefully never again be decimated as a people. They also referred to themselves as bees and doves. Both were symbols of the royal Mazur Grail lineages. When large migrations of foreign peoples began to flood into Asia, circa 1400 BC, the Anikavi escalated their efforts in a determination not to be vanquished again. Their warriors therefore became much more skilled. War is the art of destruction of life and property, and they became much better at these tasks. In order to do so, however, their spiritual principles were greatly sacrificed on the altar of human survival. They still remained a priestess class, but now their warrior role was equal in status. During this era of their history, they no longer enjoyed having the pure lineage of the Mazur Grail priests to choose from in fathering their offspring. Again, when we're talking about pure, we're not speaking racially, we're speaking spiritually. Thus, they took the best they could find, many times these males being from among their prisoners of war. As the Anikavi became more and more warlike out of their necessity to survive, they also became more nomadic in order to stay ahead of their enemies. This resulted in them fleeing their sacred old ground, as they called it, where they had established oracle sanctuaries and relationships with fragments of the Mazur Grail tribes. Like the Amazons, the Mazur were also forced to migrate, fleeing just before the shadow of the invaders was cast upon them. The result of all of this was that the Amazons no longer carried the DNA of their Mazur cousins, which had kept the genetic Grail consciousness of their oracles pure. In the instances when they used captive males to fulfill their need for paternal sourcing, negative karmic patterns accumulated rapidly. The combination of all of these factors brought about their decline as a race born of true spiritual integrity. The ancient city of Ephesus in Turkey was founded by the Amazons, the name Ephesus being derived from an Amazonian queen. The most ancient settlement of Troy, and there were many successive ones at the same locale, was established by Amazons as well. Even in the much later period of King Priam's reign, Troy had maintained strong bonds with the Amazons. As a result of these Amazonian ties, the royal family of Troy gave birth to many sons and daughters who were descendants of these warrior priestesses. By that time, however, girls were taken only in tutelage and then given the choice as to which life they wished to live, that of an Amazonian priestess, warrior, oracle, or a life among their paternal family in Troy. The earliest of Amazons contained the genetic strain of the Melchizedekian order, which came out of Venus, because Melchizedek came from Venus. And the Venusians were mostly red-haired people. That's where the red-haired gene came from. So a lot of these early Amazons were red-haired and fair-skinned. However, the other Grail family types, and there were all races involved, eventually, as things continued in the natural order of things, were of other racial types and skin colors. But they all maintained a spiritual purity that raised them above the chaos in which they were forced to survive. These were the Amazons that the people of Troy would have known. They were still involved in their spiritual process and had not declined at that time. They were indeed the bees of the golden hive. Bees were also a symbol of the Solarians, all souls who came from the solar ray, which included those of the Grail families. Certain pre-Incan tribes, known in ancient times as the Incala, practiced a ritual in which a golden drop of honey or nectar came forth from the hive or pituitary to enlighten the initiate in the way of the hive. The swarming of the bees to the golden drop of honey was the humming within the body which gathered force as the Kundalini energy shot up from the spine into the skull. The Amazonian women of the golden hive practiced a similar technique. The original Anikavi Amazons were skilled telepathically as well. This formed the basis for yet another analogous trait of the hive, to form collective thought and purpose with each other through telepathy and empathic sensitivity. The Amazons of both the early and later periods often adorned themselves with elaborate tattoos and applied pure oils of almond, lavender, and other aromatherapeutic essences to their skin. The Amazons loved horses, something that they were introduced to during the first stages of their nomadic life as the Anikavi. To an Amazon, her horse was her pencha, meaning soul root, or that which anchored her soul to the earth. Next to horses, serpents were most prized, representing to the Amazons, as they did to other goddess-oriented orders, the primal power of the Great Mother. The Amazons had no written language, as all of their history, instruction, and poetry were orally transmitted. They did have certain sacred symbols, which contained multiple meanings, but these were used in initiation and did not compose a language per se. Consequently, in addition to being readers of the Akashic records, the women of the Golden Hive possessed incredible memories through which volumes of history, knowledge, and verse were passed from generation to generation. I will say that when they became involved in other cultures, like the Trojans, many of them were, knowledgeable readers and could read and they had literature in their lives, but not in regard to their cultural heritage. The importance of the Conchi Amazonian descendancy within the lineage of Ishoa ben Joseph is best viewed from a cosmic genetic perspective. This link served the purpose of bringing an important aspect of the Grail lineage, that of the divine feminine, into the bloodline of the Christed Master Ishoa. Embodied within Ishoa were all the main strains of the ancient Grail blood, including that of the Amazala. This was necessary in order for the totality of the Grail blood to be elevated to the pure form of spiritual consciousness through the body and blood of the Christed Ishoa. In the act of Holy Communion, so we consume the old generational blood path of the Grail consciousness, and by drawing its sacred etheric nectar into our entire being, we are given opportunity to engage the gleaming white pillar of the Grail temple, the Philosopher's Stone, which represents the alchemical transformation of the elemental worlds into the pure expression of spirit. From the Thothic perception, Holy Communion is not just the Catholic ritual, which can be beautiful and highly elevating to the spirit and soul. Holy Communion to him has a wider spectrum. You take Holy Communion in your life every day if you're invoking the spiritual consciousness of that presence in your being. So it's not only that ritual, although it is inclusive of it. I've spent many years in the virtual world of Second Life, which I have used for my artistic endeavors to include in videos and other things. And I still am, but not to the extent I was before because I've discovered AI art. However, in years past, I co-founded a dance company in Second Life, and we had as many as 80 people from all over the world show up in their avatar bodies for these events. And later, I had my own small little group of women dancers. These dances are created by putting together small bits of dancing animations that are purchased in World, and you can put them together to create an actual dance. Then, if you want other people to join you, they can get on your HUD, and this activates them as you're dancing, they're dancing. So this is the way I created these dances. I choreographed them, and my dear friends in Second Life were part of my small dance group. What you're about to see was created in that way, and it is reflecting the women of the Golden Hive. So I thought you might enjoy it as a last conclusion to this video.